Let me, you are seeing my PowerPoint, correct?
Yep.
Great, great. All right. So let me just minimize a couple of screens here and get them out of the way. So we're here to talk about connectors, and there's a lot to choose from as we start deploying 4K and even 8K technology. So I want to give you just a review of some of the technologies and connector products that we've seen out there in the marketplace, and some trends. Again, I've got a background in integration. Did some projects even close to the Philadelphia area, like QVC Studio Park when I was originally built, when I was with Sony Integration. And I'm a native of Philadelphia, so I feel like I'm coming home a little bit. I was born in Bucks County, and although I haven't lived there in a while, but it's good to be back in the Philly area virtually. Neutrik is the leading supplier of connectors for the professional entertainment industry. We're really synonymous with the development and the production of innovative products. A lot of our products have become standards. Products that we develop like SpeakCon and OpticalCon and PowerCon. These are like industry standards. But we take connectors really serious. This is a kind of a cool shot. This is actually a machine that stamps out our XLR. So not only do we design our product, but we actually build the machines that manufacture our product. The company is based in Liechtenstein. It's a country that is between Switzerland, Austria, and Germany. It's a very small country, but there's a high degree of expertise in engineering and automation. Neutrik Americas, where I'm headquartered out of, is in Charlotte, North Carolina. We handle Canada, North America, Central, and South America. So, topic today again, connectors. Let's go through some of these as you're looking at a lot of options in your systems and your design work. I'll start with this one, the BNC. Well, it's been out there for a while, but still for a lot of applications, this is still a really good product. It's been around. It was patented in 1951. Two gentlemen by the name of Neil and Conselman were part of the original design. And so the BNC stands for Bayonet Neil Councilman, but it's been around since 1951. It's still a pretty awesome product. I mean, it can handle signals from 3G SDI in today's world up to 8K if you get the proper product. It's inexpensive. It's really kind of a rugged connector. We've all been out in the field where you've dropped them, stepped on them, and then they survive. Easy to terminate. But they are limited on bandwidth and distance. When we start talking about higher data rates, that's where you really have to be aware of what you're choosing, so you don't get into trouble with that. And then there's also the micro BNC that you're seeing more and more in products like routing switchers and stuff, where they don't have as much space on the back of their frames for a full-size BNC, so they're just making these micro BNCs so you can get to as many connections as they need in a small amount of space. And then you also see a lot of DIN to micro or mini BNC cables that are out there. But if you are looking for a product that you could use in today's, say, 4K world and even go up to 8K, there's definitely BNC products out there. We have one that can go all the way up to 24 gigs. We've optimized the design so that we've can handle those bandwidths, and is fully compatible with common coax cables. We have a lot of customers use our UHD BNCs now for 4K applications, but they feel like they're future-proofed if they increase their data rates in the future. It's real important, though, that you choose the correct BNC connector along with the correct cable to maximize the bandwidth that you are looking to achieve in the future. Another cable or connector, I should say, that we're using a lot of more and more these days is Ethernet. The RJ45 connector for category 5E up to category 6A and beyond. Now, again, it's a connector that's kind of inexpensive. The quality varies. It's easy to terminate, certainly not rugged, and has limited mating cycles, and obviously no IP protection. You can't use this product really outside and expect it to get through a couple of rainstorms. But we are seeing more and more use of the RJ45 on audio products, video products, DMX, lighting control products, intercom, even products like Dante. You see the RJ45 on our Dante box, and even our PoE injector. Obviously it's got the RJ45 on there, and these are products that customers are using more and more in their system. So the RJ45 is becoming certainly still a very important connector. So to address that, because we realize there's some limitations on the standard RJ45, we developed EtherCon years ago, and what we decided to do is not reinvent the RJ45 connector, but ruggedize it. And so these are ruggedized shells that around the RJ45 that go into our D series connector. And we have a variety of types that you can do IDC punch downs, or you could plug a category 5 or 6 patch cord right in the back of the chassis connectors. We have some that are feed through. But what this offers you is IP65 protection on some of our models. So if it's used outdoors, it's protected against rain and dust. They are certainly PoE compliant, and it's built upon a system that allows for a lot of mating cycles. So you can use these hundreds, if not thousands of times, and not have to worry about failure. Another Ethernet type product that we manufacture is called the 8+2 pole, or we call it the 10-pin XLR. Now there's some advantage of this. So you may have a project that you may want to look at this as a possible solution for you. It's much superior in terms of ruggedness to the typical RJ45. It offers data throughput up to category 5V performance, but power at 16 amps at 50 volts, so it exceeds PoE capacity. It's all metal housings, so you don't have to worry about RF interference or electromagnetic shielding issues. And again, the chassis is a standard D series chassis. I will say, if you look at the back of that chassis, you may get scared at the 10 pins that you would need to solder, but otherwise it is a great connector for a lot of applications. We have some folks using it for DMX and lighting applications. Pretty interesting. They're setting control and power over one connector. As the trend in the last couple of years, and certainly since the pandemic, multimedia connectors have been coming into play more and more in our facility design. We're having to tie into encoders and decoders and PCs, and bringing in Skype calls and Teams calls and Zoom calls. And most of those connectors are based upon HDMI and USB type connections. And those obviously aren't terrific for professional applications. Neutrik does have a series of locking HDMI connectors to help with that. So this is an example of our locking HDMI cable that you see up top going into a D series cutout HDMI receptacle. It's a feed through. The nice thing is you could plug a standard HDMI into the front of this chassis connector, but using our pre-made cables, it is a locking connection. And then you may say, geez, well, that's great on one end, but on the other end of the cable, I have to still plug into, say, a consumer device, and that's fine. You can unscrew the barrel of that connector on the other end of the cable, push the HDMI connector through, and it's a standard HDMI that you could plug into, a decoding product or a PC or something. But at least you have one end that is a locking connector. And we have the same thing for our USB products, for USB 2, and we even have a USB-C product, but this USB-C product is really for OEM manufacturers. There's a lot of issues with USB-C if you explore that. There's a lot of limitations on length and voltage. So we don't encourage this to go into broadcast service panels and you're trying to run USB-C for 50 or 75 feet. It's just not going to work. And then there's also locking connectors on things like the AOC cables that are out there. So these are active optical cables. They have things like locking HDMI and USB on their ends, and they have basically fiber transceivers that are built into the connector, so you could extend the length of those cables further than you typically would. So those are copper connections, and those are some that you can certainly look at deploying in your facility and facility design. But I'm going to switch now to fiber optic connectors, and that's really what we're seeing an explosion. I'll say the three areas of Neutrik in the last couple of years that have seen tremendous growth is power with our PowerCon locking connector. Our EtherCon has exploded, and then OpticalCon and our fiber optic products have really exploded. If you're unfamiliar with fiber optic cabling, just a quick overview of what it is. You have an outer jacket. You have strengthening fibers. These are
don't see your screen anymore.
Oh, you don't? Okay, so just going over what a fiber optic cable looks like. Again, you have the outer jacket. The strengthening fibers are aramid yarn. They're basically, it's a generic name for Kevlar fibers that are in there. Then there's another coating and cladding, and then the core is the actual glass. So that's all what makes up a fiber optic cable. There's two types of fiber cables. There's your multi-mode cable where the light is bounced down the cable. The disadvantage of that is that technology, you have a limitation on bandwidth and certainly distance versus single mode fiber, which the light is shined straight down the core glass, and so you have the ability to put more bandwidth and go a greater distance in multi-mode. Single mode fiber is pretty much used exclusively in broadcast, for instance, like cameras and running long cable runs. So some pros and cons of fiber. Yes, it dramatically increases your data density. You can go longer on the runs. You don't have issues with electrical interference and RF interference, obviously. It's secure because it's different. You can't tap into the glass, and it's a green solution where, you know, the glass is made out of sand. So some of the things like copper and stuff is not used in the production of fiber. Some cons that people say that are out there is that, well, fiber is really expensive. Fiber has come down in cost. And so sometimes, depending on the amount of runs you need and bandwidth, when you add up versus a copper solution in fiber, it's almost a wash. Fiber is fragile. Well, I'll show you some fragile solutions and some rugged solutions. So it is you know, it's kind of it's not as fragile as it used to be if you have the right products. It is, I will say, it is difficult to terminate. It is something that if you don't do it often enough, you're certainly not going to have the skills. It is best to do fiber termination in a lab because of the core glass of fiber is smaller than your human hair. So you really have to be aware of dust and dirt when you do fiber termination. So the labs are really conditioned with you know, HEPA filters and things like that. Fiber cables require esoteric cleaning. Kind of yes and no, and I'll talk about that later on. And it's avant-garde and scary. Well, once you get used to it, it's a really awesome product to design in your systems. The most common fiber connectors out there, the LC is by far the most widely used fiber connector that you'll see on the back of devices. The LC, or the lucent connector, is what you see there. The ST, you'll see that as probably the second most common connector. The broadcasters like it, you know, because they've been using it a while. It kind of looks like a very small BNC, so they kind of are used to that. And then you have the MPO or MTP connector. The MPO stands for multi-fiber push-on. This came out of the data center industry, where down one cable and one ferrule, you can have up to 72 fiber strands in a particular cable. So a lot of fiber connectivity in one small connector. Now these are all physical contact connectors, which I'll explain later some of the disadvantages of physical contact connectors. But these connectors, the LC, the ST, and the MTP, MPO, they're mostly used in infrastructure. They're certainly not designed for rugged use or multi-patching. You know, eventually they won't hold up if you're patching these cables dozens and dozens of times. The ferrule is exposed, so on the ST and the LC connector, you'll see the plastic cap. if you pull that cap off, the ferrule or the end of the fiber is exposed. So again, the fiber is very small, and you have to be very, very sensitive to any dust that can get on that fiber. It could then block the light from getting through in the connection. And there's no IP protection. You certainly don't want to put these outside without being in some kind of ruggedized or enclosed case. They just won't hold up. And they are difficult to repair. You're going to either have to pull the cable, get it re-terminated somewhere, or just totally replace it. The good thing is LC patch cords are pretty much a commodity these days, so they're not horribly expensive. Neutrik looked at this and developed a product line called the OpticalCon Lite. And basically what we wanted to do was make it just as cost effective and low maintenance and a small form factor, so that we added some rugged ability to a typical patch panel with this connector. And these are great for semi-permanent or permanent applications where you need to patch every once in a while. And you want something a little bit more rugged than that plastic LC connector. And again, it goes into a D-shaped chassis connector. The product line is pretty sharp. It's the Duo is 2 fibers, Quad is 4, then we have MTP 12 and 24. These are the same size. Think of it as like a Fiber XLR, that size, and going into a D series chassis connector. The nice thing about this connector is that it is designed for with some Kevlar for high cable retention. You could twist this cable in half, bend it in half. It'll add some attenuation to the signal, but it won't break. Where if you take a typical LC patch cable and if you walk next to it in your rack and you happen to bang into it, it's probably going to snap the glass. Where on this particular product, you won't have that. You can roll a chair over this cable and not have to worry about it breaking. And it's available in single and multi-mode, and it's thousands times more rugged than a regular patch cable. So we have customers that are using this. They may go from their equipment room down to a BSP panel in their studio with like a MTP 12, and then from the BSP studio panel, they'll break out to a bunch of cables or connectors, and that allows them to have some patching capability if they have to do some maintenance or something, and not have to worry about it being a really fragile connector to plug or unplugged. But if you're looking for true ruggedness, our OpticalCon Advanced product is the product that you want to look at. This is a product that you want to use in the field. One of the things that is unique about this particular product line to address the dust issue with the cable, because you're dragging it across the football field or at a press event, we have shutters on both the chassis and the cable side that close, so that when you disconnect the cable, the shutters close, and that protects from dust and dirt. But we designed it so that it really does integrate well into an LC or MTP environment. And I'll show you what that looks like down the road. And again, the shutters for dirt and dust protection. And these are built with a variety of cables. We make the connectors, we don't make the cables. We work with a number of the leading cable manufacturers. So we have a tactical cable, we have an armored cable. So if you're in a really rugged environment, you could drive a forklift over the armored cable and not crush it. We have what we call an extreme cable. So if you're doing a live event, you need to put the cable down outside for weeks on end. It protects from rodents chewing on the cable and penetrating the core glass. And these are all assembled. So it's a real challenge to build and terminate these cables. So we just don't sell the connectors on them. We sell this as a complete assembly because you need thousands of dollars of termination gear. And again, typically it should be done in a lab. But there are some parts of this that if you need to, you can replace in the field. If like the top end of the connector gets damaged, you can unscrew that and replace that easily yourself. The series mimics the Lite series, where we have the Duo, which is 2 channels of fiber, and actually on the Advanced series we have 4 copper conductors, so you can actually use it as a hybrid camera cable. And you see on the Duo chassis down below on the left, that in the front and the rear, you can actually plug LC connectors into that chassis connector. And on the quad, it's a real good example of 4 LCs plugging in the back of that chassis connector. So again, simple integration into your rack environment. The MTP 12 and 24, it's 12 fibers and 24 fibers. Again, these are all D-series chassis connectors. And again, we could add more fiber, capability to cables and stuff in the future, since we are an MTP-based product here. And then the yellow cable is a really good example that you plug that breakout cable in the back of the chassis connector. This is going to 12 LCs, but fiber is really neat. You can mix and match. I could have 4 LCs and 8 ST connectors on that breakout cable. So it's easy to mix and match what you need for your environment. Switching to camera connectors. So the LEMO SMPTE fiber connector has been the standard for dozens and dozens of years. It's a really nice, well-designed, rugged stainless steel outer shell. And again, it meets that SMPTE standard of 2 fibers plus copper. There's no shutters. And again, it's a physical contact connector. And it's not the easiest to clean, and certainly field repair is not the easiest either. We've looked at this connector and have developed a product called Dragonfly that was introduced at NAV in 2019. And what's unique about this is that it's using lens technology or expanded beam technology. And we were able to get the ferrules of the expanded beam technology down to a insertion loss level that now allows us to deploy it in broadcast environments where you need multi-patching or multi-connection points in a system design where you don't want to have a lot of insertion loss. It fits into the same form factor as the standard SMPTE cutouts, so it can populate into your panels. It can go into any broadcast camera these days. The ferrule is there in the circle, and on the chassis side we deploy the same thing. The nice thing about the chassis is that it's all modular, so if something needs to be repaired, it's easy to replace what is broken, the fiber or just a copper or the front part, versus some of the others that are out there now. You have to send the whole assembly back to be repaired. And this is a close-up look at what the ferrules look like in that product. They're MPO based, so we're real familiar with that technology. But the lens technology or expanded beam technology, this is the real advantage here. So on the left, you see the physical contact single mode example, where that yellow arrow is showing the physical contact, right? You have one cable and another cable going into a connector that physically contacts each other, and the light is passed back and forth. It is the best way to have a connection and the least insertion loss, but you have a lot of issues with that, especially in broadcast environments with dust and dirt. You could contaminate the other connection if you have a fiber that's dirty. Depending on the contamination, it could scratch the other connector. So there's certainly disadvantages to physical contact versus the lens technology, where the lenses get very close to each other. There's a small air gap, so they don't physically touch, but the lenses do emit a larger beam of light. So what we're showing here is the single mode solution is 330 times more surface area of light. So a piece of dirt that may block the single mode connection probably won't even be a factor in the lens or expanded beam solution that we have with Dragonfly. So what that means is that a little speck of dirt won't probably knock your signal off if you're doing a football game and you move cameras and connect into a different cable. You can just feel comfortable that it's going to fire right up. The other thing about this technology is it's simple and very easy to clean. You do not need scopes or isopropyl alcohol. Really, all you need is canned air. If it's really contaminated, use some distilled water and wash it out and dry it out and blow it out. But it's a very easy connector to use. We've got deployment down at Tulane University, and you know, they do multiple sporting events, and they rarely have to address cleaning this connector. They have students that are operating cameras. If they do have an issue, they said they typically will just, you know, blow some air into it and then plug it in and go. So it's a great product. It's very robust, and it's certainly a connector solution that you may want to consider. And if you're looking for even more serious deployment, our FiberFox product is another expanded beam connection system that offers 2 and 4 channels of fiber, and this is really for rugged situations. I mean, you could take this connector with the cap off, submerge it in water, and not have to worry about it. It's IP68 protected. Again, this is a different type of solution. It does have a lot more insertion loss than the Dragonfly connector, but again, for certain applications, you know, this may be a good solution. So so that is, and just to give you an example of FiberFox, kind of the same thing. You know, a dust particle, because the beam of light's bigger, won't even be a factor on the expanded beam solution. The other advantage of lens products is that over time, the physical contact fiber, because you're touching it, you will introduce more insertion loss. So at some point, you're going to have to get maintenance done on this. Where the expanded beam lens product, the insertion loss is constant over time, because obviously you're not touching the 2 ferrules during a connection. So that's another advantage, less maintenance over time. And that is really it. That's covering all the connectors that I think we see people using out there in today's world. And I'll answer any questions that come up at this point.
Can I check it? Was the one with the larger contact area, was that actually available, or because I think one of your drawings said concept on it? I'm guessing because that's where the drawings came from, but is it actually a product that's available today?
Is that the Dragonfly product you're talking about? Yes, it is available today.
Larger contact point.
Yep, it is. Yes. Yep, that's been available since the end of 2019.
Oh wow, cool.
Yep. Yeah, unfortunately, we introduced it at 2019 at NAB. At the end of 2019, the product was ready to ship, and a month or 2 later, the pandemic started. So we lost a lot of momentum. And a lot of projects that it was planned for got either postponed or canceled. So, but now that things are slowly getting back to normal, we're seeing more and more customers deploy this. And it's interesting because we have, like at Tulane, they still have a lot of LEMO SMPTE connectors around, because they have, sometimes they'll have outside broadcast trucks come in, and we have made cables that go from Dragonfly to SMPTE connection, so they can you know, get from the physical contact world onto the expanded beam world with ease. So it's kind of the nice thing, like I said, about fiber. It's real easy to mix and match. You could have one connector on one end and another on another end, and it'll work. But yeah, if you wanted to find out more about Dragonfly, let us know. You know, contact your either reach out to us or contact your local Neutrik representative, and it's an amazing, neat product. I mean, at NAB, we were, you know, taking the ferrule, what we call the XB2 ferrule, that expanded beam ferrule, and just dumping it and putting it and squishing the end of the ferrule into this sand, this dust bowl of dust, basically, and packing it full of dust and dirt. Just taking a can of canned air and spraying that out, plugging it back in, and it works. So it didn't scratch the ferrule. You didn't need to put a scope on it, make sure everything was cleaned. It's pretty neat how easy it is to keep that fiber optic connector clean. So again, some people will say, geez, it's you know, it's really a challenge to, you know, clean fiber, you know, because traditionally to do it right, you really need a scope. You need to look at both ends of the fiber connector, or both fiber connectors are going to go together, make sure there's no dust or dirt. Then you have to either clean it with a one-click cleaner, like a pen that would go in and clean it, or if it's really dirty, you have to take it apart and use lint-free wipes. And again, the risk there is if you don't know what you're doing, you could easily scratch the ferrule. Then you've introduced a scratch on the glass that has to go back and get repolished, and that cable is out of use for you know, a couple weeks. And so this is a much nicer technology overall. Well, again, thank you so much for allowing Neutrik to be a part of your afternoon. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me at david.kuklinski@neutricusa.com, or I also have an alias, david@neutricusa.com, or you can contact your local Neutrik representative. And again, any of the connectors you saw here, we do offer samples. So if this, you know, you want to look at a particular EtherCon connector, you can get on our website, fill out a sample request form, and we can send that to you, so you can, you know, get a sense of what the connector looks like before you order, you know, the quantity that you need. So, all right.
Thank you.
David, thank you.
Thank you, David.
For the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.